Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Edinburgh. Welcome to Easter Road. Norwich City playing their second game in Scotland, the conclusion of their pre-season here. We're going to run through the team news very, very quickly, and then we're going to shift it on pretty rapidly after that. So here's how Norwich line up, a very youthful flavour to their starting 11 this afternoon. Kick-off, of course, at 2 p.m. rather than 3 p.m, so don't get caught off guard by that. Norwich line up with Gunn in goal, Shipley, Hills, Tompkinson and Giannoulis, the back four. I read it as a 4-2-4, so Sorensen and Gibbs, the two midfielders in that situation, with Rowe on one side, Hernandez on the other, and Ida and Hugill up front. We'll obviously see the actual formation once kick-off arrives. The subs, Krul, McGovern, Aarons, McCallum, O'Reilly, McLean, Sargent, Kamara and Pookie. So that is Norwich City's starting lineup for this game. Paddy, we're actually going to shift away from the game to talk about a story that we've just pushed onto our website. So I'll throw it over to you to talk a little bit about that, because for weeks we've been asking about any update to do with the story that we broke earlier in the summer around Mark Attanasio and the US investors. There is an update, so fill people in on that update.
There is indeed, Connor. Good afternoon from sunny Leith, isn't it, Connor? You were singing the Proclaimers on the walk down here, weren't you, mate?
Yes, but yes. So,
but on all seriousness, yeah, basically Norwich playing here 2:00, but earlier today in Edinburgh, back in the city, there was a Q&A, well-attended Q&A. I'm sure you've seen the club have put a few pictures out on the panel, if I've got my memory serves. Anthony Rickens, who's its club's commercial director, head of legal Sam Hall, commercial director Sam Jeffrey, and assistant sporting director Neil Adams. In the front row, not on the panel, but in the front row, majority shareholders Delia Smith-Michael, Wyn Jones, and inevitably at that well-attended supporter session, they were asked about the story we originally broke, the presence of a US delegation at Carrow Road for the final Premier League game of last season. Mark Attanasio, owner of the Milwaukee Brewers, reportedly worth $700 million, flanked on that occasion by Anthony Rickens, the commercial director, and Zoe Ward was also there, pictured. And basically the latest, as we understand it, is that the club have confirmed to that panel of supporters investment talks are underway, are progressing. There'll be more news in the weeks ahead, was the timeline. And then, interestingly, that it was sparked, this process, at the turn of the year by Michael Folger, who is the second largest shareholder, I believe, after Delia and Michael, approaching the club and essentially looking to divest himself of his shareholding, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Connor, we're talking 17% or so in that.
It's about 16, I believe, yeah. But I think there's probably some room for debate of exactly what percentage it is. But yeah, around 16 to 18, I think you'd probably be about spot on.
And obviously that what had been reported subsequently following our original story, that has been confirmed to be the case. But it was Michael Folger going to the club. It wasn't the club maybe actively canvassing for potential investors. And that then triggered the start of a process which, as we get the sense from today's public update, is reaching a positive conclusion. Worth reiterating, at this Q&A today, there was no mention of Mark Attanasio. There was no even revelations around the identity of said investors. There was no talk of American investors. Purely that investment talks are pretty well advanced, I think we can assume now, and they should be concluded in the coming weeks, and there'll be some positive news, hopefully. And to add to that, it would appear that it's Michael Folger's shareholding that this investment group or individuals are looking to take on, which of course would then retain Delia and Michael as the majority shareholders, but, and we'll get into this in due course now, probably the first step on the path to maybe eventually a change in ownership. So we now have confirmation. It's felt quite a long period since we originally broke the story, as you know, Connor. We've had to basically say there is no news. Well, today we have some news, and it's positive news.
Yeah, and with these stories, these deals are so complex. Even the transitioning of shares, which is essentially, it would be a transaction between Mark Attanasio, if it is obviously the person in question, as we believe it is, and Michael Folger in that situation. So it wouldn't even, obviously the club would have to approve it and let shareholders know. We've been kind of through all this earlier in the summer, but that extra detail about Michael Folger wishing to obviously relieve himself of his shares, and of course the confirmation for the first time that these investment talks, again, as we reported, are ongoing and have been ongoing since the start of the year. is an update, and of course the timeline of when we can expect some news on that as well, which is all incredibly interesting, because I think, you know, every Q&A that we've done, every one of these that we've done, I've seen lots of tweets in the last week or so. It's all gone quiet. Nothing's going on. What's happening? We can now definitively say that this is the case. But as you kind of touched upon, Pad, and this is the interesting element of maybe what it looks like long term, because let's not beat around the bush. Delia and Michael are not trying to put this delicately. There will come a stage where they will have to remove themselves, you would imagine, from the running or spearheading of the football club. We've seen plenty. Again, we get plenty of examples. You had that wonderful chat with Kieran Maguire earlier in the summer about what these kind of long-term acquisitions of shares looks like, and people coming from perhaps minority shareholdings to then become the majority shareholder. We've seen it at Arsenal. We're currently seeing it at Leeds. There are plenty of other examples as well. He's obviously owned the Milwaukee Brewers now for 16 years. He's someone who does have a long-term head on him. It does feel like this is almost a try before you buy situation, doesn't it? As we've kind of been saying throughout the whole summer.
Yeah, very much so. And the flip side is, Norwich can welcome, if it all goes to plan and this gets concluded in the way we seemingly feel it's going to be, Norwich can look at this situation as well. And as it stands, clearly it'll be Michael Fulger's shareholding. So the dynamic doesn't change hugely in terms of the strategy and the very community-focused ethos that Delia and Michael have wanted to set in train. But ultimately, you mapped out who this individual is. If it is Mark Attanasio, this is a very, very successful US sports owner who is used to calling the shots at the Milwaukee Brewers. So that doesn't strike me as a guy who's going to come in, dip his toe in the water and leave it at that. It very much feels like this is opening the door to, in time, at the right pace, when everybody who's involved with Norwich at the minute is comfortable with that, moving it into a transition phase in terms of the ownership. You referenced the Kieran Maguire chat. The biggest takeaway I had from that was when he referenced what had happened with Leeds United's ownership. There's an investment model affiliated to the San Francisco 49ers, I believe, NFL US franchise. And they initially came in a very similar fashion, a smaller shareholding, didn't alter who was owning Leeds at that point. But over the course of these last few seasons, and now I think there is a process in place where they will take full ownership of both Leeds United and Ellen Road in terms of the stadium property. So you can see a similar approach with Norwich. And, ultimately, again, it's probably worth stressing that I think in the short term, inevitably when we first put the story out, it was, oh my God, Norwich are going to be able to go big in this current transfer window. They're going to be able to spend tens and tens of millions of new US cash. That hasn't proven to be the case. And I don't think that would necessarily prove the case moving into January's window if this is concluded this side of Christmas, or maybe even next summer's window. I think this is very much an incremental relationship that could blossom into potentially one day, as you rightly said, Delia and Michael moving to the side in terms of the shareholding and the ownership, and it passing to this vehicle. And of course, that's hugely exciting, I'm sure, if you're a Norwich fan, because you can, as you rightly say, look what he's done. And we've all become baseball and Milwaukee Brewers fans over the last few months. But you look at the length of time he's been associated to that club and how they've built up their stadium, the team, the franchise, all those elements. And you can see why there would be common ground with Norwich City and Delia and Michael and what they want this club to look like when they move on. And when they, as they always said, they're caretakers, they're custodians. They just want to put it to the next persons in a healthy state, and that the viability long term of the club is protected. So with a guy who's been involved with the Brewers for 16 years, that is a massive box ticked, clearly. So, it's a huge, exciting development. But I guess we just have to wait now. And when advanced talks become confirmation, then I'm sure all these questions about what the next phase looks like will be answered, because I'm pretty sure that if it is the American investors and Mark Attanasio, they'll be very keen to get their messaging out there and what their vision is for the football club. But an exciting development, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and there is, of course, still some stuff that remains unanswered, some questions that remain unanswered. What does it look like in terms of how many, if any, seats that will these investors demand on the board? What does that look like? How does it shift the dynamic to what Norwich City currently are? and the way that they run their club at the minute. What kind of levels of investment are we talking? What areas are they going to be looking to invest in? All of these are questions that remain unanswered. But for the first time, confirmation from the club that they are in talks with potential new investors, which is an incredibly exciting update, of course, on the story that we broke. I think it was the end of May, wasn't it? So it's been a little period since we've been able to update it. We've obviously done plenty of stories on it that you can read on the Pink and Plus app and on, of course, our website. That story in full, you can read it. But just to kind of touch back upon the detail about Michael Folger, because this is a new one. I mean, it was kind of confirmed in reports after our initial story that would be the case, that it would be his shares that would be acquired. But him then going to the club and saying that he wishes for those shares to be acquired, his shares to be acquired, that's a really new development, something that we haven't heard up to this point as well.
Really is. And ultimately, until we hear from Michael, we probably don't want to second guess what the motivation was for doing that. But I look at it, and was it last season when it wasn't just Delia and Michael celebrating 25 years as a board member, it was also Michael Folger, which got overlooked to a degree, I felt. But that's a huge length of service. We all know his business interests in Norfolk and how over that 25-year period, he's bailed the club out on occasion, infamously the Grant Holt funds to make that deal happen. Pertinent, as I believe it was today was the anniversary of signing Holty as well. So there's a bit of symmetry about that. But, I don't think at this stage we'd want to second guess what Michael's motivations are. Suffice to say that if he's felt now's the right time for him to, sell his shareholding, then you would respect that. And clearly 25 years, that's pretty unheard of in terms of directorships, I would have thought, in English football at the top end of the game. So, maybe he just feels the time is right now in terms of him as a shareholder to maybe let somebody else have the stress and the strain and the financial worries, and he can just turn up at Carrow Road, I'm sure, and just enjoy one of his great passions in life, along with his horse racing, of course, and that is Norwich City Football Club.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure with that would come, similar to what we've seen with Stephen Phillips when he stepped down earlier this summer, a nice ambassadorial vice presidential role potentially. They've got vice presidents, they haven't got a president yet. That's a role that could be occupied by him. Of course, all of these are things that we will have to wait and see upon confirmation if we get there, of course. But Norwich City just a few weeks away, they believe, from being able to update supporters about the potential new investment from the club, the story that we broke earlier in this summer, and very positive update. You can read the full story of that on pinken.com, on the Pink and Plus app as well, for full details on exactly what that involves. But Pat, just to finalise, very bizarre situations that we're actually sitting in the ground, game kicking off in 45 minutes discussing this. So if we kind of bring things back to the focus on today, I mean, it's a very youthful Norwich side. I'll run through it just again. Gunning goal, Shipley, Hills, Tompkinson and Yanulis the back four, Sorensen and Gibbs the midfield two, Rowe, Hernandez, Ida and Hugill the front four. I think could potentially turn into a 4-2-3-1. We'll see exactly what it looks like when Norwich are out, but at the moment it looks like a 4-4-2 variation, a 4-2-4 sort of formation. And this is an interesting afternoon, Pat, because obviously yesterday kind of felt like a more significant event in terms of looking ahead and trying to look at what Dean Smith is, or who is in Dean Smith's thinking ahead of Cardiff next weekend. But there's still an opportunity in there. Yanulis, after maybe Sam McCallum didn't exactly grasp his opportunity left back yesterday. Jonathan Tompkinson, given Grant Hanley went off injured, although worth stressing, I can actually see him as a speak down the front row signing some autographs. There's no sign of any strapping or any limping from him as he walked into the stadium. I think Dean Smith did say that was a contact injury, so probably not expecting him to be out long term. But even sort of in the absence of Christoph Zimmermann, it does feel like there's potentially a slot amongst the Norwich City centre-backs for potentially Jonathan Tompkinson to take. Onel Hernandez, another. There's still that wide right spot that we've spoken about extensively. Adam Ida will want to impress. Jordan Hugill remains Norwich City's top scorer in pre-season as well. He'll be hoping to add to that. So even in a game where it's quite a youthful look to Norwich City side, there's still subplots and players who will want to push their cause to Dean Smith ahead of next weekend.
There is, but it does have a feel to me of, what we saw the 11 at Celtic Park. The vast majority of that, if not all of those players, I think, subject to this week getting back to obviously to England and Norwich and no fitness issues, that's probably going to be his 11. I'm looking down this 11 that you've just reeled through there, Connor. Obviously, with the caveat, the Grant Hanley situation, but as you rightly said, we both watched him stride pretty purposefully down the touchline on arrival. No discernible pain or discomfort. So I'm pretty sure he's going to be in the Dean Smith's thoughts for Cardiff. And if that is the case, your Newlis instead of McCallum, yeah, okay, I could see that in terms of Cardiff. But Hernandez and Ida, sorry, not Hernandez, Ida and Hugo. Well, Pookie, I think, is a shoe-in. And he went Sargent and Rashid yesterday. Didn't really feel, certainly with the ball, both of those advanced their claims. But we know how much that Dean Smith likes Sargent in terms of his pressing ability. And Rashid, you would think, still would have that X factor to his game. And of course, worth reiterating with Ida, he is still very early on in his rehab return from, a few months out with a knee injury. So probably not quite ready to go, more so than a footballing decision. So I really, beyond Yanulis, it feels like maybe he's decided Krul instead of Gunn for him in terms of Cardiff selection. So bar Yanulis, I don't think Sorensen has really done enough to maybe oust McLean, Sonani, Cantwell, which was Dean's 3 at Celtic Park. But for me, it's Yanulis. If Yanulis, can show some positive elements, not so much with the ball because we know what he's about, but defensively, because I thought McCallum looked very suspect yesterday defensively. And of course, the first goal came down his side, albeit it was an offside, clearly, that wasn't given. But Yanulis, for me, is the one really, Connor, out of this 11 who I think could threaten the 11 for Cardiff. Other than that, it's just topping up minutes for some of the others, I think.
Yep, agreed. Let's see how it all transpires across this afternoon. Of course, you can follow live updates on the Pinkin Plus app. You can take out a free trial by going to our website. There's a tab on the top left. Click that. Follow all the details, and you'll be able to follow live updates of this game. Of course, pinkin.com for that story that we've discussed in the last 20 minutes or so on the new investment. There's Easter Road. It's a resplendent stadium. There's Norwich fans to my right in the away end as I look. Probably a fair few who were at Celtic yesterday. I'll move my head out of the way of Paddy's shot, and then you'll be able to see them hopefully a little bit better. So there we go. That rounds it off nicely. Thank you very much for watching. Keep it locked to all our channels. We'll have all the analysis reaction from Dean Smith after this game as well. Plenty more to come as Norwich City conclude their pre-season campaign here in Edinburgh. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you soon.